Hi there, welcome to Life from Above. My name is David Kenney. Glad you could be with us on the program today. We're talking about a series of lessons when Jesus was the one asking the questions, when Jesus asked the questions. You probably, it's an old routine. You see it between two comedians, and one's asking, sort of off the wall questions, and the other guy might say, wait a minute, you let me ask the questions this time. And then they go and they make a worse situation of it. And that kind of thing is funny. And the idea of asking questions has always been intriguing. Took some speech classes in high school and talked about the method of asking questions as a form of teaching, as a form of communication, and how effective that is. Well, Jesus asked questions, but Jesus isn't like just everybody else. Jesus is the Son of God. He has foreknowledge. He has knowledge. He's all knowledge. He knows the answer to the questions he's asking. So it sort of implies another question goes along with it. Why is he asking this question? Well, he's provoking thought. Matter of fact, Leroy Brownlow once made this statement: Jesus often used the question method in his teaching. Questions arouse attention and provoke thought. And sometimes that is more apparent to us than others. And today's question to me is one of those examples where the thought is something that really sort of goes along with it. And the question that we're going to look at today is, which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? You think about worry, and it is something that all of us struggle with from time to time. It's something that we all have to deal with and to be aware of. And not all worrying is bad. We're not exactly talking about that. I mean, worry is a part of life, but it can become excessive. And if we get caught up in it, it can be damaging to us. And so Jesus addresses that. Some people say, well, that's not really a Bible topic, but it is a Bible topic. It's one of the questions that Jesus asked. And he didn't just ask it one time, he actually asked it twice. And if you look here at the harmony that we have, you'll see the two occasions we have there. One is in 28 AD, which was outside of Capernaum. Now this is where I usually recognize it as part of the Sermon on the Mount. He asked that question, and that's a passage we'll look at in a minute. But that's outside of Capernaum. And then the second time, he actually uses that question again to get people to think. A year later, roughly, he's talking about different matters, and one of them is worry. And that's probably outside somewhere of Judea. And that's in Luke chapter 12. So, he's asked this question more than one time. And the fact that he's asking the question is important. And it's really relevant. Today I watch, you probably do similar things that I do. I watch, Fox News. And boy, there's something on there all the time to worry about. I get the same kind of feeling from CNN. Or any of the news. Some of the newscasts and some of the networks, it isn't necessarily that you're worried about what's being portrayed, but what's not being portrayed. I mean, there's all kinds of things to worry about. And that's just Fox News. That's just news. And, we go through those kinds of things, and if we have a steady diet of that, we can worry about things that we have no control over. And we need to be mindful of these things and concerned about them and pray about them. But there's certain, when we allow worry to paralyze us in our lives and it contaminates our lives, that's something that we need to be careful about. Now, some people, they say, well, that's why I don't pay attention to anything that's going on. Well, I'm not recommending that. That's not a good strategy. We need to be aware of what's going on, and we need to be active and speak out to things that are wrong and speak up for things that are right. But at the same time, we have to get a handle on this concept of worry to make sure that we're not being damaged by it. And Jesus taught about that. Let's look at the passage. This is Matthew chapter 6, 25 through 27. It says, "Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? Now, there's a lot of interesting things about this. Like, I'm tempted to point out, Jesus points out that human beings are of more value than the birds of the air. And, the people, the animal rights people, the real radical parts of them, they don't like that kind of a comment. But Jesus has made that statement. And, you may want to ask additional information for whatever you want. But there's all kinds of interesting things in here. Food and drink and things like that. We, in our country, we're abundantly blessed. And, where we get our next meal and our next drink, that might not be as pressing of an issue to us, unless we don't have it. But we can substitute all kinds of other things that we worry about. And that's something that, we need to keep in mind. Now, one writer I was reading, this is David Roper in his excellent commentary, Truth for Today. He has a 2-volume set, Life of Christ Supplement, Volume 1, Volume 2. Really recommend you check that out. But he makes this statement. He says, Jesus was not teaching against concern for the future, but there is a difference between legitimate concern and the mindless fretting that saps our energy and renders us less capable of meeting future challenges. Jesus was not opposed to planning ahead. He was preparing for the future events as he spoke these words. He was preparing his apostles for the time he would leave this world. Worrying is sort of, it's a fascinating subject, and I've always this question, it challenges me. And I remember different terms. And 2 of them I remember was worrywart. And I remember the other one, fuss budget. And I thought, what are those words talking about? I know they're about worry. So I just did a little bit of research about it, and I thought it was sort of interesting. Worrywart, according to the dictionary, is a person who worries too much or who worries about things that are not important. And synonym was fuss budget. And I thought, well, we have worrywart and worry. So I looked and I found out that worrywart came from about 1956. There was a comic strip, Out Our Way, by a J.R. Williams, 1888 to 1957. And he wrote this comic strip, and the main character in it was named Worrywart, first and last name. And basically, he would cause worry in other people. And so the inverse of the term, we use it, in our common vernacular, and they just put it in a dictionary. Worrywart, someone who worries too much. And the other term, fuss budget, didn't necessarily tie to a cartoon that I could see, but it's just one of those terms that we use to describe basically people who worry too much. And that's something that, we need to be aware of, this idea of worry. And I went through, and when I study a word or something like that in our language, I like to go through and look at it from different angles. And one of the things I went to a website, I think it's called brainyquote.com, and I typed in the word worry, and it gave me some, it gives you prominent quotes from people that they make on a different subject, and I put in the word worry. And I just selected a few of these quotes, and some of them might strike you a little humorous. And I thought I would share them with you. This one, quote, I believe God is managing affairs and that he doesn't need any advice from me. With God in charge, I believe everything will work out for the best in the end. So what is there to worry about? That's Henry Ford, speaking against worry. Here's another one. Don't worry about the world coming to an end today. It is already tomorrow in Australia. That's Charles Schulz, the one who wrote the Peanut strip. Robert Fulcrum made this statement, don't worry that your children never listen to you, worry that they are always watching you. The example is a powerful teacher. George Burns said, if you ask what is the single most important key to longevity, I would have to say it is avoiding worry, stress, and tension. And if you didn't ask me, I'd still have to say it. So, interesting note. Martin Luther, the theologian, said, pray and let God worry. Some good ideas. This one I found sort of funny. Some of you may not find this funny. Well, sorry. But I found this one sort of humorous. This is by Robert Frost. And he made this statement. It's a funny thing that when a man hasn't anything on earth to worry about, he goes off and he gets married. Life is complicated. And so, there's Robert Frost for whatever it's worth. But, worry is a subject that, we all struggle with. And we have to be careful about the effects of it. Well, what are some of the effects of worrying? Well, I went out to WebMD and I just did a little bit of research, and I grabbed a couple of statements that I thought would help for us to think about. They defined it as worrying is feeling uneasy or being overly concerned about a situation or a problem. With excessive worrying, your mind and body go into overdrive as you constantly focus on what might happen. And they gave two main warnings, two main things that can come out of worrying. Now, this is not just being concerned about something. This is going beyond that. And they point out high anxiety and the risk of stress. And they went through and they gave some symptoms that sort of comes out of, and it related to stress more, but they're really overlapping, I think. You have a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and there's a lot of symptoms that come with that, in addition to those. And here they are. Some of you may feel some of these things. High blood pressure, raised sugar levels, dizziness, fatigue, headaches, a fast heartbeat, lack of concentration, irritability, muscle aches, nausea, nervousness, rapid breathing, shortness of breath, sweating, trembling, twitching, low immunity, short-term memory loss, heart disease, and even possibly a heart attack. These are some of the symptoms that can come out of stress and high anxiety that are the two major things that can come out of worry. And we have things to worry about, to be concerned about. We have things in our lives that happen that bring a lot of anxiety to us and a lot of stress for real things. So things that aren't really all that important, that we're investing all these symptoms in, we need to be very careful about. Now, they also had this warning: chronic excessive worrying can lead to depression or even thoughts of suicide. So Jesus is talking about a subject that, we might say, oh, worry. I mean, come on. I mean, we all worry, but we need to be mindful of it. Jesus is asking this question. And he asked the question, who by worrying can add a cubit to their stature? Now, you might think, well, what's a cubit? Well, a cubit, there's not a standardized definition of it, but basically a cubit is the idea from the tip of your finger to the tip of your elbow. Now, obviously, some people's arms are a little bit longer or shorter, but it's about 22 inches roughly. I didn't measure mine, but that's basically the meaning of a cubit, where it came from. And the question is, can you add 22 inches? I mean, who can add an inch by worrying? I mean, the question is pretty strong. But, the thing about it is, with worry, you may not be able to add to your height, but you can definitely hurt yourself. And you could actually diminish from your life, from your physical health, by this kind of thing. Well, how do we fight it? How do we fight these effects? Now, we might have legitimate things that we worry about, and you have them and I have them. My father had a prolonged battle with brain cancer. We had surgery. We had no idea what was going to come out of it. And we found out what came out of it. And then every day it was like, it was worry, a lot of stress, a lot of emotion, a lot of anxiety. I had these symptoms they have. I had them, particularly the short-term memory loss. I had trouble remembering things. I totally missed an appointment with a doctor or something I was supposed to have. They called me up and said, "Where are you at?" They were a little nicer than that. I totally forgot, and I usually don't do that. I'd show up late at things because I'd forget about them and have to rush here, rush there. So this is something that, whether we're worrying about something that we ought to be worried about, or maybe we're worried about something too much, or maybe we're worried about something that we really shouldn't be worried about. Maybe some of these strategies might help. And this is also from WebMD. They gave 10 suggestions on how to fight worry. One of them I thought was interesting is meditation. And they talked about, think about something else for a while. Give your mind a break. Matter of fact, when you work on computers, they say it's a good idea just to sort of stop what you're doing and focus your eyes on something else, because your eyes can become fatigued. And you can help yourself by taking a break and focusing on something else besides the computer screen. Because if you work with a computer all the time, you run a risk of fatigue, and it could impact your eyesight. Well, this study was saying meditation can help you get your mind on something different for a while. It's interesting when I was reading about some of these, particularly this one, I thought, people do all kinds of, there's all kinds of suggestions about meditation and all that. Some of it's New Age movement, some of it's all. But, when I was thinking about it, how many times the Bible talks about meditating on God's Word? And it uses that term, meditate. Think about it. How about we meditate? How about we read and think about God's Word a little bit, or a whole lot of it? Why don't we meditate on that? Why don't we think about that? Those stories that just thrill us as children, maybe some of us may never even heard of them. We read them, we think about them. You don't have to go off and hum in a dark room to meditate. Take your mind off and put it on something else. One of the other things along with that meditation, they said, was speak out loud through your meditation. Not necessarily humming. I'm sure they didn't have a problem with that. But speak out loud as part of your meditation, because that helps focus your mind away from what you're worried about. Because sometimes you can trick, your mind is pretty complex. And so the idea of engaging your senses into doing something away from what you're thinking about, they suggested that you speak out loud. Well, I wonder, would not prayer to God be included in that? We worry, and our worrying is not very productive. And we can't really change anything by our worrying, which is what Jesus is pointing out. But do we talk to God? The one person who may be able to do something about it, or might do something about it, can do something about it, do we even talk to him about it? Maybe that could be a part of our meditation. Something to think about. Well, back to the list. Another one is breathe deeply. Breathing is always recommended. But maybe for me, this is one that struck me sort of personally a little bit, because I found myself under anxiety and things, and I would catch myself. I'd be holding my breath. I wasn't breathing, much less breathing deeply. And so I had to, concentrate on breathing deeply and breathing, because one of my reactions to some of this stuff is I just sort of hold my breath. I have real shallow breathing then. And breathing is important. Don't underestimate that. We were at a lunch, and some people were together. They were talking about sleep apnea, and some of them were fighting that. And they had to have CPAP machines. My dad had sleep apnea, and he basically stopped breathing in his sleep, and he got to the point that he couldn't even move. He was so exhausted. And they diagnosed it, and they put him on this breathing machine, and it helped him tremendously. Well, if that's going to help you tremendously when you're asleep and you're not breathing, maybe breathing deeply when you're awake will help you. Not that hard to understand. On the list, be present. Don't forget your surroundings. Be aware where you're sitting. Be aware of what you're wearing. Be aware of the room temperature. Be aware of the music. Take a break and be present where you're at. Because worrying is really taking your mind to a place where you're not at the moment. So you need to refocus your mind. Another one they have down is reach out. Reach out to other people. Visit with other people. Spend time with other people. Talk to other people. You don't necessarily have to talk to them about what you're worried about. But spend time with other people. That's a very healthy thing to do. And maybe reaching out to other people might be helping them. That would be beneficial. So something else to think about. Tune into your body. Be aware of your physical makeup. Be kind to your body. Be kind to yourself. And then decompress has the idea of relaxation. Be aware of the parts of your body that are under stress and make sure you are aware of that. Another one is laugh out loud. You know, the Bible talks about laughter being good medicine. So laughing out loud, you know, laughing is just so important. You know, some of these things you might say, oh yeah. But you know what? You go and you take these away, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I need some of this. Well, laughter is something we really need. It really helps us. Crank up the tunes. Listen to music. Music can be very relaxing. Now, the music that I hear 3 cars down blasting from somebody else's car may not be relaxing to me. But, you know, we all have music, sounds that we like, that are soothing. I listen to different kinds of music for different kinds of moods. We recognize that. You know, I usually don't put the real slow, you know, melodic, going to sleep stuff whenever I'm on the treadmill. I don't do the treadmill anyway. I do the elliptical now. But I don't put the slow stuff when I'm trying to do cardio. Well, the same things apply. I mean, we ought to be able to see that. And again, we're talking about how do we fight worry, and we're trying to protect our body, and we're trying to protect our minds. Well, one of the things they said is get moving, exercise. And you don't have to be a professional runner or an amateur jogger. This article is saying move. Move your body. If you know, even walking. Matter of fact, I heard an expert talking about depression one time. He talked about 2 forms of depression. One was biological. Something's wrong with your body that's creating the depression. The other kind he talked about was situational, where something in your life, some traumatic event has happened, and you're just overwhelmed with grief or anxiety, and it turns into depression. He had the body kind of depression, and he had it diagnosed in the hospital, and they were asking him how to combat this. And he made this statement. He said, the number one thing that helps for both kinds of depression is walking. Walking. He said that tells your body that you're accomplishing something, even if you intellectually don't think that you're accomplishing anything. He said your body goes through the motions of walking, and it has a therapeutic, accomplishing kind of feeling that actually impacts your body and impacts your mind. So try walking. It's a good thing to do. Get moving. And the last one they had down is be grateful. Be grateful. Matter of fact, they suggest that you keep a journal and write things and force yourself to think about things to be grateful about. We all have them. We may have to sit and think about them, and maybe we need to do that. Matter of fact, in worship services, sometimes we sing a song called Count Your Many Blessings. Name them one by one. It may surprise you what the Lord has done. This article from WebMD is saying, have gratitude. Be grateful. You have a lot of good things in your life that are happening. Focus on that. Matter of fact, they said in that journal, you know, sometimes it's a good idea to go back and, you know, whenever you're particularly struggling, maybe you go back and look at some of the things you wrote down on previous entries just to sort of help tune your mind or retune it along those lines. Now, these are 10 things that they gave to think about worrying. But I want you to think about, you know, the Christian has, you know, we have to keep our focus on things of eternal, not temporal. One of the reasons that we struggle with worrying is, quite frankly, some of it, a lot of it, who knows how much of it, a lack of faith. A lack of faith in God. Do we think about that? That's something we need to pay attention to. When I think about worry, I think about these words that the Apostle Peter wrote. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Thanks for watching our program today. Before we close our program today, we'd like to take a moment and review this roadmap to heaven with you, since the matter is so serious. There are many incorrect set of directions out there, and sadly, so many people are following them. For example, some people have been given wrong turns. They believe things such as faith only, works only, or grace only. Or some attempt to change the order of the turns, being baptized before they even believe. Some people fail to realize what point they are on the map. Don't even open their Bibles yet, and they think they're saved already. As a person travels in a car or takes a hike, has to follow the proper directions, so we must follow the proper directions to heaven. Let's take a look at the directions on our roadmap to heaven here. You have to look at these passages in your Bible for yourself. We'll just list the steps, the turns on the way. First is to believe or to have faith. And then number 2, to repent, to turn away from sin. Number 3 is to confess that Jesus is the Son of God. Number 4 is immersion, or to be baptized, which is a burial in water to have your sins washed away. And then you're added to the church by the Lord, not by a group of people, or not by giving some kind of testimonial experience or things like that. And then once you're added, you need to serve and worship the Lord faithfully all the days of your life. And the key word's faithfully. You don't waver. And that's very important. We need to keep in mind, too, that in Noah's day there was a big flood, and only people in the ark were saved from the flood. The same is true today. There is no salvation outside the Lord's church. Where are you on the roadmap to heaven? Thanks for watching our program. Please let us know if we can assist you with further information for your journey.
In this world we